So we're going to review this quiz that you just took to prepare us for the next quiz that's coming. All right. But there is one detail before even starting the review of the quiz that you don't even have yet. I want to give those back to you as soon as I can. I do want to go. There's a missing part of last week's notes, and that missing part is right here. What I would like you to do is open up your notebooks and copy this down right here. It says an equation is not linear if, and it has these details. And we're going to go over that, go over these 3 example problems, because this stuff will pop up on next Friday's test, maybe even this Thursday's quiz, okay? So please copy this down in your notebook. So before we even start discussing this, we need to talk, what is linear? What does linear actually mean? Anybody? It's a line, right? A line. So is this linear? No. That linear? Yeah, kind of. So when we're talking about a linear equation, we're talking about an equation that if you graph it, it'll produce a line, not a curve, okay? So, I mean, yeah, we could look at some graphs and it's crystal clear when you have a linear equation or when you don't have a linear equation. So, visually, obviously, it's easy, but algebraically, if you look at an equation, it's a little bit more challenging to know if number 1's linear. What do you guys say? Is number 1 linear? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Now, I gave you these notes so you could identify when it's linear. An equation is not linear. It's not a line if it has 2 variables being multiplied together. Like if you have x times y, if you have xy or any variables multiplied together, then it's not going to give you a straight line that's continuous. Yeah, so number 2 is not linear. This is not a line. Why not? Because it has an xy right here, x times y. So 2 is not linear. What else? A variable is in the denominator. So an equation is not linear if a variable is in the denominator of a fraction. So if we actually had something like, let me just write one here for example, y equals 3 over x minus 4. Then right there, that would not be a line because of that 0 in the denominator. I mean the x in the denominator, okay? So a variable cannot be in the denominator. That will make it be not a line. And the last one, linear equation, or an equation is not linear if a variable has an exponent on it. Now we're talking about a variable. So y squared, x squared. So is this a line? Yes, it is. Oh, but it has an exponent. Yeah, but it's not a number, right? This is really a linear equation that says y equals 2x minus 9. Make sense? This one over here is not. So going through this, number 1, this is a linear equation. Yes, it will produce a line. Linear. Linear. Number 2, no, it's not linear. Not linear. Okay, why is number 2 not linear? Because it has xy, x times y. 2 variables cannot be multiplied together. Does this produce a line? No, why not? Because it has the exponent, right? So this is not linear either. Not linear. Okay. This will actually produce a U-shaped curve. We'll get to those later. But anyway, and this one, we just gave an example of it not being linear either. Not linear. Because of the variable in the denominator. So I think on this Friday's quiz, this is going to pop up as multiple choice questions. Is it linear? Is it not linear? All you got to do is understand that you can't have variables multiplied together. You can't have a variable in the denominator. And you can't have a variable squared or the 3rd power to the 4th power because that produces curves. Let's move on to the quiz that we took Friday. A lot of people struggled with this quiz. I'm just going to go over a couple of questions on each one. On the first 4, it asks you to rewrite the following in function form. You need to know what function form means. What does it mean? That's right. It means get y by itself. So let's just pick one. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Pick one.
1, 8, 4, 1, 2, 8.
Let's go for 4, the most challenging one. Okay, let's get y by itself right here. So what we're doing is solving for y. Here's y. It's on the left side of the equal sign. Let's get y by itself. Let's get rid of the 3x. We're going to subtract 3x. 3x, take away 3x is 0. What you do to one side, you do to the other side. you can't really subtract 24, take away 3x, so you're just going to rewrite it. Let me rewrite the whole thing. 4y equals negative 3x plus 24. Notice that I wrote the x term first and the number second. Last but not least, I need to get rid of the 4 that's right there. So how do I get rid of the 4? Divide by 4, that's right. Divide everything by 4, and you'll have your function form equation y by itself. Y equals negative 3 divided by 4. You can't really do that, so you just write it. Negative 3/4 x plus 6. 24 divided by 4 is 6. And that's your answer. And a lot of people did not get that answer. I don't know why. Let's move on to the second section, numbers 5 through 8. That's rewriting it in standard form. And what's standard form? So standard form is capital AX plus capital BY equals capital C. The reason why they're capitalized is to help you remember that you don't want fractions, you don't want decimals. So all of these, you don't want fractions, you don't want decimals, you want the X's and the Y's on the left side of the equal sign. So that's what you got to keep in mind on all these. So like number 6, for example, let me zoom in on 6. I want to get rid of that fraction. I'm going to multiply everything by the denominator 3. And I'm going to have 3y equals, the 3's cancel, I have a 2x left over. 1 times 3 is 3. So all I need to do now is get the x, this 2x, I need to bring it over here to the other side. So I need to get rid of this 2x. I get rid of it by doing the opposite, minus 2x. 2x take away 2x is 0. And what you do to one side, to do to the other side, take away 2x over here. Obviously, you cannot take away 2x from 3y's. It's like taking apples from oranges. You can't do that. So we're just going to rewrite it. And our final answer will be negative 2x plus 3y equals negative 3. That is standard form. And I saw some of us change the sign to positive 2. That's fine, as long as you change all the signs. Minus 3y equals positive 3. You can't just change this to positive and leave the rest. If you're going to change this sign, you have to change this sign and this sign. You have to change all of them. It's up to you. Either one was correct. So many people missed numbers 11 and 12. You had to make an XY table and graph it. And of course, it was rewriting in function form first. So this equation right here is not in function form. What do I need to do before even making an XY table? Divide by 3. Now, here's the interesting part. What number is in front of x? 1. So you need to know that there's a 1 in front of x. That way, when you rewrite this thing, the 3's cancel. You're going to have y equals, it's really 1 divided by 3 with the x on the side, minus 2. Okay. And now that you see that fraction in front of x, now you know what inputs to use. Remember, most of the time we do 0, 1, and 2, but when we have a fraction, you want to use what? 0, 3, and 6, or 0, 3, and negative 3, whatever you prefer. 6 does go off of this graph. So let's do 0, 3, and negative 3. Let's plug in 0 right here. That's going to be 0, and 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Okay, and then if I plug in 3, let me show you my work. There's my function. Let me plug in the 3 into the x position, which is going to cause the 3's to cancel, and I really have 1 take away 2. 1 take away 2 is what? Negative 1. So negative 1 is our output for the input 3. And last but not least, let me again rewrite the equation and plug in negative 3. So there's my equation. Let me plug in the negative 3. And again, negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. So you really have a negative 1 right here that's being multiplied by this other 1 right here. So 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, and negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3. And if you graph those guys, you get 1 point for showing that XY table. You get another point for graphing those coordinates correctly. And so many people miss it. I don't know why. 0, negative 2, this coordinate right here, 0, negative 2, is right there. The coordinate 3, negative 1, 3, negative 1, 3 on the x, and negative 1 on the y is right there. And negative 3, negative 3, negative 3 on the x, negative 3 on the y, it's down there. As you can see, it does line up. Draw a line through it. You need arrows also. A lot of people didn't put arrows. Let's move on. Numbers 13, 14, there will be this type of question, maybe the same exact question on the quiz that's coming up this Thursday. I give you an equation. It might not be in standard form. This one is in standard form. And I'm also going to ask you to find the x and the y-intercepts and then graph it with those x and y-intercepts. So when you have an equation like this, I always show my work x int, y int with a squiggly line between it. And we also know that, or we need to know that to find the x-intercept, we must set y equal to 0. And to find the y-intercept, we must set x equal to 0. Okay, so these are things we need to know. So when you rewrite the equation, negative 3x plus 4y, instead of y, we're going to put the 0. And then equals 12. So that becomes a really simple equation to solve because 4 times 0 is nothing. And you really have negative 3x equals 12, which means that x equals what? Negative 4. Bernardo, you awake? All right. Let's move on to the y-intercept. We're going to set x equal to 0. So instead of x, I'm going to put a 0. That's going to be negative 3 times 0, 0, plus 4y equals 12. And of course, negative 3 times 0 is nothing. You could cancel it out. You could even just right here focus in on this equation. 4y equals 12. Let me erase that. How do I get rid of the 4 in front of the y? Divide by 4, which means y equals 3. So what we just found are the x-intercept and the y-intercept value. So the line of this equation that's in standard form, this line is going to cross the x-axis at negative 4, and it's going to cross the y-axis at 3. So you go to your graph over here, and you're going to go to negative 4 on the x, and you're going to put a dot right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, right here, right on the edge. And 3 on the y. 1, 2, 3, right there. So you know that it crosses the x right here and the y right there. That's already 2 points. Through any 2 points, you could draw a line. And you got your other point on this question by doing that. So a lot of people messed up on that. I hope we don't, because this will pop up again on Friday's quiz. And we're going to end it there.